The sound of heavy boots echoed across the long corridor. The air was cold, filled with a metallic smell, and every step made the silence heavier. Captain Elias Ward walked with chains on his wrists and ankles, each clink reminding him of his capture. 2 tall Zorith guards marched on either side of him, their scaled armor shining under the pale lights. Their alien faces showed no emotion, but their long, sharp eyes never left him. Elias kept his back straight even though his shoulders ached from the weight of the restraints. He refused to bow his head. If he was to be displayed as a prisoner, then he would not give them the sight of a broken man. The humans had fought hard against the Zorith Dominion, and though the battle was lost, he knew surrender was not shame, it was survival, and survival gave hope for another fight. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, the throne hall of the Zorith Empire. Elias's eyes adjusted to the sudden flood of golden light. The hall was massive, its ceiling stretching higher than any human cathedral. Strange banners of silk hung down, marked with symbols of alien victories. Thousands of alien eyes turned toward him. Rows of nobles, soldiers, and scholars filled the chamber, all whispering in their strange language as the human was dragged before them. At the far end, on a raised platform of black stone, sat the Zorith Queen. She was taller than her guards, draped in silver robes that shimmered like flowing water. A crown of living crystals rested on her brow, pulsing faintly as if alive. Her presence commanded silence, and even the loud hall seemed to bow before her. Elias's steps slowed as he was forced forward. His chains rattled with each movement. He could feel the weight of their stares. To them, he was not a soldier or an officer. He was an animal caught and displayed. A whisper spread among the nobles. The human, so fragile, so weak. But Elias did not look at them. His eyes were locked on the queen. The guard stopped him 10 paces before the throne. One of them pushed him down with the butt of a spear, but Elias caught himself before he hit the floor. He kneeled, but not fully. He would not collapse. He raised his head, and his voice, though dry, was steady. "My name is Captain Elias Ward of the Earth Defense Fleet." The hall erupted in laughter. The sound was sharp and cruel, echoing off the walls. To the Zorith, humans were a minor species, still climbing from their small homeworld into the wider galaxy. His proud words sounded like a child boasting before giants. But Elias did not flinch. He let the laughter wash over him like rain. The queen did not laugh. Her eyes, deep violet glowing faintly in the light, fixed on him. Her long fingers tightened on the arms of her throne. Something in her face changed, something no one else noticed at first. Her body stiffened, and then in one smooth motion she stood up. The laughter died at once. Silence spread across the hall like a wave. The nobles looked at one another in confusion. The queen rarely moved from her throne, and never for a prisoner. Yet now she stood tall, her silver robes flowing around her, her gaze locked on the human who had spoken. Elias did not understand. He only knew that her reaction had shifted the entire mood of the hall. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons, unsure of what was happening. The nobles leaned forward, whispering in worried tones. Something about his name, his voice, or his presence had touched the queen deeply. The queen raised one hand, and the whispers stopped. Her voice carried across the chamber, calm but sharp as glass. "This voice," she said slowly, her eyes narrowing. "I know this voice." The hall trembled with confusion. The nobles exchanged shocked glances. Some muttered in disbelief. How could the queen know a human? They thought it impossible. Elias frowned. "Your Majesty," he said, keeping his tone respectful but firm. "I have never met you before." Her gaze did not waver. "Nope, not in person, but I have heard you, long ago." She stepped down from the throne, each step echoing. "In the deep void of the storm when my fleet was lost, it was a human voice that guided us through." "That voice was yours." Elias's chest tightened. He searched his memory. He remembered a mission, years ago, when his ship had sent out a wide transmission during a solar storm. He had spoken into the comms, sending warnings and navigation codes even though he thought no one was listening. Could it be that those words had reached across the storm to this queen's fleet? The queen stopped before him, towering over the shackled man. Her eyes studied his face as if to make sure it matched the voice in her memory. Around them, the nobles held their breath, waiting for her judgment. The silence grew heavy. Elias, still on his knees, met her gaze without fear. "If my words once reached you, then perhaps it was fate," he said softly. "But I am only a man, nothing more." The queen's lips curved slightly, Not quite a smile, but not coldness either. She turned to her court, her voice rising with authority. This human is not what you think. His voice once saved the Zorith fleet. He will not be executed. He will remain alive until I know why fate has crossed our paths again. A roar of protest filled the hall. Nobles shouted, guards shifted nervously. To them, this was madness. A human prisoner should have been nothing but an example of weakness. Yet the Queen's word was law, and none could defy it. Elias felt the chains dig into his skin, but inside something changed. For the first time since his capture, hope stirred within him. He was still a prisoner, still shackled, but the Queen's recognition had opened a door. And where there was a door, there was a path forward. As the guards pulled him back to his feet, Elias lifted his head. The hall still stared at him, but no longer as a joke. Now they looked at him with confusion, fear, and a hint of respect. The human had entered in chains, but his voice had shaken the throne. The throne hall was quieter now than it had been in decades. Elias Ward, still shackled, stood before the Zorith Queen, and yet something had shifted. The nobles who had once sneered and laughed now watched him with careful attention. Some whispered quietly, exchanging nervous glances. A human, shackled and alone, had done what no weapon could. He had stirred the Queen's curiosity and respect. The Queen's violet eyes never left him. She stepped closer, her silver robes whispering across the polished floor. Her height and presence were overwhelming, but Elias did not flinch. The confidence he carried, small and quiet, seemed to fill the space around him. He realized that the same calmness which had guided the Queen's fleet years ago was still alive inside him. The calm, steady voice of a human determined to survive. "You speak as if you know destiny," the Queen said softly, almost to herself. "Yet destiny rarely comes from a human." Her gaze sharpened. And yet, it did. Elias tilted his head, unsure whether she spoke to him or to the empty hall. "I do not know about destiny, Your Majesty," he said. "I only know action. I only know what a man can do with what little he has." Her eyes flicked to his hands, bound in heavy iron cuffs, then back to his face. The court murmured as one. The Queen's recognition of him caused waves of speculation. Some nobles whispered, "Is this human more than he seems? Did he somehow survive what no one else could?" The Queen raised her hand and the hall fell silent. She motioned for the guards to lower their weapons, and the metallic click of armor ceased. Then her gaze softened, not with weakness but with memory. "Years ago," she began, her voice now strong and commanding. "A storm came through the outer rim of the galaxy. My fleet, it was trapped between two collapsing moons. My ships were scattered. Lives were lost. And then I heard a voice, a human voice, calm, clear, guiding us through the darkness. That voice saved us. That voice was yours." Elias's chest tightened. The memory of that mission so long ago was faint but real. His team had sent a wide communication during a solar storm. His words had been meant only for any passing ships, a simple warning and navigation instruction. He had never thought anyone would hear it. And yet across the vast emptiness of space, that small act had reached this alien queen and changed the course of her empire. I do not remember," he said carefully. "If my words saved lives, I'm glad. I only spoke what I thought was right at the time." The Queen's eyes narrowed as she studied him. "Right at the time, yes. That is human nature. You do not act for glory or power. You act because it is necessary. You speak the truth when others are silent. That is why your voice carried through the void and reached me. That is why it matters," the words echoed in the hall. A human, small and seemingly insignificant, had influenced the fate of an entire alien fleet. Nobles murmured among themselves. Some frowned in confusion, while others leaned closer, eager to see what more this human could reveal. Elias looked around at the court. He had expected hatred, scorn, maybe even laughter. Instead, he felt a strange weight, a mixture of fear, awe, and curiosity. The Zorith court had underestimated humans for decades. They had believed humans were weak, fragile, and short-lived. But here, before the throne, Elias embodied something they could not understand. Courage, persistence, and a quiet strength that no weapon could destroy. The Queen tilted her head. "Your people are small, fragile, yet they endure. They speak truth even when it is dangerous. They persist even when all seems lost. That is why your kind has survived where stronger species have fallen." Elias met her gaze, feeling a strange connection across the barriers of species and language. "We are survivors," he said simply. We do what we must to live, to protect what we love, to ensure tomorrow comes. That is all any being can do, a murmur went through the court. The nobles had expected arrogance, excuses, or fear. Instead, they heard honesty and quiet confidence. They did not fully understand it, but they felt its power. The queen stepped closer, circling him like a predator inspecting an unusual prey. But this inspection was not of hostility. It was curiosity, respect, and a careful calculation. "So you have no ambition beyond survival?" she asked. Elias shook his head. "Not ambition, only purpose. Humans do not always seek to conquer or dominate. We seek to endure, to protect, to learn, and sometimes, to speak when others cannot." The queen paused, letting the words sink in. Her gaze softened, and for a brief moment she looked almost human herself. "Then perhaps I was wrong to expect weakness from you. Perhaps I underestimated what a human could be." Around the hall, whispers spread. Some nobles frowned. Others exchanged nervous glances. The idea that a human could possess wisdom and courage beyond what the Zorith expected challenged everything they had learned. Humans were not supposed to matter in the galaxy, and yet here was one, shackled and already changing the balance of thought. Elias remained silent, letting her words pass. He understood that speaking now would not add anything. His actions and presence had already spoken volumes. He had entered the throne hall as a prisoner, but his voice had already altered the perception of an empire. The queen's attention returned to him. "I do not yet trust your intentions," she said. "Nor do I know if your presence here is coincidence or fate. But one thing is clear, I must keep you alive for now. I must uncover why your voice has weight beyond your species' place in this galaxy." Elias nodded slightly, careful to keep his chains from clinking too loudly. "Then I will remain alive as you wish, and I will answer your questions to the best of my ability." The queen stepped back, raising her arm slightly to quiet the court. "Guards, release his hands loosely. Keep him shackled, but let him breathe freely. I will speak with him privately. There is much to learn." The guards exchanged wary glances but obeyed. The heavy chains on Elias's wrists were adjusted, allowing him to move his arms. His legs remained shackled, reminding him that he was still a prisoner, yet the gesture felt like a small victory. He took a slow breath, savoring the moment. As the court began to disperse, the queen motioned for Elias to follow her down a side corridor, away from the eyes of nobles and soldiers. The walls were lined with strange glowing symbols, and the air hummed faintly, as if the building itself were alive. Elias noticed her silence. It was not the silence of anger or suspicion. It was thoughtful, deliberate, as if she were measuring every step and word. He realized that this was more than curiosity. The queen had recognized something in him, something humans often carry but rarely see reflected in alien eyes: potential. They entered a smaller chamber at the heart of the palace. The room was circular, with a high ceiling and walls covered in holographic displays showing the galaxy. Stars, planets, and fleets moved silently in patterns only the Zorith could fully interpret. The queen gestured for him to sit, though the shackles forced him to kneel slightly. She remained standing, watching him closely. "Tell me," she said finally, "what drives your kind? What allows you to speak truth, act with courage, and endure hardships that would break others?" Elias thought for a moment. "We have no choice," he said simply. "We are small, fragile, short-lived. Every day is a challenge. Every choice carries risk. We endure because we must. We speak because silence can destroy us. We act because waiting is death. That is how humans survive." The queen considered his words carefully. "So it is not strength alone that makes your species remarkable. It is persistence. It is courage, and it is honesty." "Yes," Elias said. "Even when it is dangerous. Even when no one is watching. Even when it seems pointless." The queen's expression softened. "Then perhaps I have underestimated you all along. Perhaps the galaxy is wrong to dismiss humans." Elias met her gaze. Shackled, kneeling, and exhausted, he felt a quiet sense of triumph. He was still a prisoner, yet he had already achieved something no human had in generations: the recognition of an alien empire's ruler. The chamber grew quiet. Outside, the galaxy continued to spin in silence, unaware that a human voice, small, simple, and true, was already beginning to change the course of history. Elias looked up at the queen, and for the first time he realized that being shackled was not the end. It was only the beginning. The human spirit, though small in scale, could shake the foundations of worlds. and perhaps one day it would shape the fate of the galaxy itself. The chamber was quiet, illuminated by soft, glowing panels that traced the curves of the walls. Elias Ward remained kneeling, his chains slightly loosened, yet still a reminder that he was a prisoner. Across from him, the Zorith Queen paced slowly, her silver robes whispering against the polished floor. She was a vision of authority, elegance, and alien grace, yet her violet eyes betrayed curiosity, and a trace of something Elias had not expected: recognition and respect. "Tell me," she said, her voice calm but firm, "how does your species survive against greater threats? Against enemies far larger, stronger, and more powerful than yourselves?" Elias lifted his head. The chains clinked faintly as he shifted. "We survive because we adapt," he replied simply. "Because we learn, because we trust in each other, because we do not give up. Strength is not always in size or weapons. It is in spirit and mind." The Queen paused, her gaze fixed on him. "And yet you were captured. Why did you not flee, fight harder, or call for reinforcements?" Elias met her eyes steadily. "Because sometimes survival is not about escaping. It is about enduring until the right moment. A life lost in chaos serves no one. A life preserved may yet change the future." The Queen's eyes softened and she stepped closer, circling him like a predator examining an unusual prey. But this was no hunt. Her movement held curiosity rather than aggression. "You speak with humility yet with confidence," and she observed. "I have ruled this empire for centuries, yet your words, they carry weight. I cannot explain it, yet I feel it." Elias allowed himself a small nod. "I speak only what I know, Your Majesty. Humans are small in scale, but we have survived storms, wars, and endless uncertainty. Perhaps that is why our words, our choices, carry meaning." The Queen's fingers traced the edge of her throne's raised platform, her mind clearly working. She was thinking of fleets lost, of battles that had turned on small decisions, and of the strange transmission she had once heard in the void. The voice had guided her fleet, and now before her was the very human who had spoken those words, or at least carried the same presence across time and distance. "Very well," she said finally. "You will remain in my court for now. But you will answer my questions fully without evasion. You will help me understand why your species, so small and fragile, endures where others fail." Elias nodded. "I will do my best." The Queen motioned for a guard who stepped forward. "Prepare his quarters," she said. "He will remain under watch, but I will speak with him daily. Bring him knowledge of our empire, our fleets, and our history. He will learn what it means to stand in my presence, and perhaps he will teach me what it means to survive as you do." The guard hesitated, glancing at Elias. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "is it safe to allow a human such freedom?" The Queen's violet eyes met his. "Safe or not, he is alive. And alive, he may teach us more than any weapon or fleet could." Elias was led through a series of twisting corridors, each more elaborate than the last. The palace seemed to hum with life, the walls covered in strange symbols and moving displays that showed distant star systems, trade routes, and military formations. He had never seen anything like it. Every step reminded him that he was far from Earth, far from the human fleets he had once commanded. Yet the feeling of purpose remained strong. The guard finally stopped at a chamber that would serve as Elias's temporary quarters. The room was small but clean, with a low bed, a table, and a series of alien devices he did not recognize. A large viewport looked out across the Zorith capital, revealing soaring towers and starships in the distance. Elias stepped forward, trying to ignore the weight of his chains. "Rest here," the guard said. "The Queen will summon you soon." Elias sank onto the edge of the bed, exhaustion hitting him. He had been captured, transported across light years, and brought before an alien ruler. Yet even in these circumstances, he felt a flicker of determination. His mission was no longer only survival. It was to prove the value, ingenuity, and courage of humanity to a species that had dismissed them for centuries. As he rested, his mind wandered back to that distant storm years ago. The transmission he had sent, barely thinking anyone would hear, had saved an entire fleet. That moment, so small and seemingly inconsequential, had now become a bridge between him and one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. It was a humbling thought, and a reminder that even small actions can ripple across the cosmos. Hours later, the Queen summoned him again. This time there was no court, no nobles, no whispers. They were alone in a private observation chamber, overlooking the sprawling alien city below. The Queen's expression was unreadable, but her eyes carried interest and the faintest trace of admiration. "You have survived in ways I cannot fully understand," she said. "Yet humans are fragile. Your species lacks the resilience of our kind in terms of technology, fleets, and longevity. And still, you endure. Why?" Elias took a deep breath. "Because we choose to. Because giving up is not an option. Because even when we are small, weak, or outnumbered, we find ways to act. We find ways to protect what matters. That is the difference. Strength is not always visible, but it is there in our choices." The Queen studied him silently. She had met generals, scientists, and rulers from countless worlds. Yet none had spoken with such honesty, with such clarity of purpose, without arrogance or fear. It unsettled her and fascinated her at the same time. "Perhaps that is why your voice carried through the void," she said finally. "Not because of power, but because of truth. Not because of fear, but because of courage. Humans speak, act, and endure where others cannot." Elias inclined his head. "We do not always succeed," he admitted. "But we keep trying. That is all any being can do." The Queen remained silent for a moment, letting his words sink in. Then she spoke softly, almost to herself. "Then perhaps I misjudged your kind. Perhaps the galaxy has overlooked something remarkable." For the first time, Elias saw her smile, gentle, almost human, yet still alien in its perfection. He realized that the Queen, despite her centuries of power and knowledge, was beginning to see humanity through a new lens. A lens of respect, curiosity, and perhaps even admiration. Over the following days, Elias remained in the Queen's court, answering her questions, sharing stories of Earth, and explaining the ways humans had survived countless challenges. He described their persistence through natural disasters, wars, and exploration into the unknown. He spoke of ingenuity in science, bravery in battle, and the simple, quiet courage of ordinary humans who acted when others hesitated. The Queen listened attentively, sometimes interrupting to ask pointed questions. Each answer seemed to deepen her understanding, not just of humans, but of life itself. Her court watched closely. The nobles who had once mocked him now regarded him with cautious respect. Soldiers whispered about his courage, and scholars began to see him as a source of knowledge beyond their calculations and studies. Elias realized something important. His chains, though heavy, were no longer symbols of weakness. They were reminders of the bridge he was building. Between species, between worlds, and between understanding, he was a prisoner, yet he was also a teacher, a representative of humanity, and a living proof that strength could take many forms. One evening, as he knelt before the Queen once more, she studied him quietly. "You have shown me something I had not expected," she said. "Not fear, not arrogance, not weakness, but resilience, honesty, and courage. Perhaps humans are not as fragile as the galaxy believes." Elias felt a quiet pride. Shackled, kneeling, and far from home, he had begun to earn the respect of one of the most powerful beings in existence. It was only the beginning, but it was a beginning that mattered. The Queen leaned forward slightly. "You will face tests in the coming days," she said. "Challenges designed to reveal the truth of your spirit. If you succeed, perhaps you will prove not just your own value, but that of your species. If you fail, we will see." Elias lifted his head, meeting her gaze without fear. "I understand, Your Majesty. I will do what I must," the Queen nodded. "Good, then prepare yourself. Your trials begin soon." As Elias was led back to his chamber, he realized that the shackles on his wrists and ankles no longer felt like the end of his journey. They were a part of it, a reminder that even a single human, small and bound, could challenge the expectations of an entire empire. And in that thought, he found hope. For in the galaxy's vast darkness, it was not only fleets or weapons that mattered. It was courage, persistence, and the human spirit that refused to break, even when shackled. The sun of the Zorith capital had barely risen when Elias Ward was led from his quarters. Today was the day of the Trial of Worlds, a series of challenges designed by the Queen to test strength, wit, and endurance. Even in shackles, Elias walked with steady steps, aware that the eyes of the entire court, and perhaps the galaxy, were upon him. The pathway to the trial grounds stretched across an open terrace overlooking the alien city. Below, towers rose like jagged crystals, while distant starships glimmered against the sky. The air was filled with the soft hum of alien technology, vibrating through the stones under his feet. As he walked, the court nobles gathered, whispering about the human who dared face challenges meant for the strongest beings in the galaxy. "This human is fragile," one noble whispered. "He cannot last an hour against the trials." "He may be clever," another replied cautiously, "but cleverness cannot replace strength." Elias did not hear them. His focus was internal. He knew the trials would be unlike anything he had faced before, but he also knew something else. Humans had always survived through creativity, endurance, and the refusal to surrender. This would be no different. At the center of a massive arena, the queen awaited him. Her robe shimmered in the morning light, and her violet eyes held a mixture of expectation and curiosity. She spoke loudly enough for the gathered audience to hear. "Captain Elias Ward of Earth," she declared, "you will face the trial of worlds. You will confront creatures, puzzles, and tests designed to challenge your body, mind, and spirit. Should you succeed, you will prove the truth of your kind, that humans endure where others fail." Elias bowed slightly, shackles clinking. "I understand, Your Majesty. I will do my best." The first trial began immediately. A massive gate opened, revealing a labyrinth filled with shifting walls and strange alien machinery. The ground was uneven and traps lurked around every corner. Elias's first task was to navigate the maze, avoiding mechanical devices designed to block, trap, or harm him. At first, the other competitors, aliens known for their strength and agility, mocked him. Some charged ahead with brute force, smashing walls or jumping recklessly over gaps. Elias observed carefully, noticing the patterns in the traps, listening to the hum of the machinery. Then he moved with quiet precision. He used his weight to trigger mechanisms safely, pulled levers to open new pathways, and memorized each section as he progressed. Where others failed through strength alone, Elias succeeded through patience and observation. His movements were deliberate, calculated, and steady. By the time he reached the end of the labyrinth, even the Queen's guards were nodding slightly in respect. The second trial was of endurance. Elias was led into a chamber with walls that glowed with a faint red light. The temperature rose quickly, and the floor shifted beneath his feet. Alien beasts resembling massive lizards with armored scales roamed the area. They moved with surprising speed, testing reflexes and courage. Elias could have run, but he remembered the lessons of his species. Strength alone was not the answer. He studied the creatures, watching their patterns. He noticed that they avoided certain areas where the light formed shadows. Using his environment, he led the beasts into these zones, trapping them temporarily. Then he moved forward, careful not to trigger their aggression. Hours passed in this trial. Sweat ran down his face and the chains dug into his skin, yet he did not stop. Every step, every choice was measured. Every movement was calculated. And when he emerged, bruised but unbroken, the crowd of Zorth nobles erupted in whispers of astonishment. The third trial tested intellect. Elias was led into a circular chamber filled with alien holograms, symbols, and puzzles. A massive lock sealed the exit, and the Queen's voice resonated through the room. "Unlock the path forward. Captain Ward, let your mind be your weapon and your knowledge your shield." The puzzles were unlike any humans had faced on Earth. Symbols shifted constantly. Logic paths changed and patterns were alien in nature. Elias felt the weight of the challenge, yet he recalled the transmissions he had once sent across the galaxy. The small calculations that had saved lives. The quick thinking that had always guided him. He began to work methodically, breaking down each puzzle into simple steps. He observed patterns, tested possibilities, and applied logic patiently. Where other competitors might have relied on brute force or speed, Elias relied on persistence and clarity. Slowly, the symbols aligned, the holograms synchronized, and the massive lock clicked open. The Queen, observing from above, leaned forward slightly. Her eyes widened in recognition of his ingenuity. Even in shackles, the human was proving that strength was not always physical. It could be found in mind, spirit, and the ability to endure. The fourth trial was perhaps the most dangerous, a test of courage and resilience. Elias was placed on a narrow platform suspended over a simulated void. Alien creatures lunged unpredictably from the shadows, and the platform itself swayed with mechanical force. One false step, one miscalculation could mean failure. Elias gritted his teeth and focused. He moved slowly, deliberately, feeling every inch of the platform beneath him. When creatures leaped, he dodged, using balance and timing rather than force. When gaps appeared, he calculated distance and momentum. The platform twisted and turned, but he refused to panic. Every step forward was a victory of will. Hours blurred into each other, yet Elias did not stop. He remembered the countless trials of human history. Storms weathered, wars fought, impossible odds overcome. The chains that bound him now were nothing compared to the weight of determination in the human heart. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he reached the end of the platform. Exhausted, bruised, and breathing heavily, he turned to face the Queen. The chamber was silent, every noble holding their breath. For the first time, the weight of human persistence had been displayed in a way they could understand. The Queen stood, her arms slightly raised, her voice ringing out. "Captain Elias Ward, you have completed the trial of worlds. You have faced creatures, puzzles, and danger. You have endured where others have failed. You have proven that strength is not always in size or weapon, but in spirit, intellect, and courage." A murmur spread across the audience. Nobles whispered in awe, soldiers nodded in respect, and scholars scribbled notes furiously. The human, shackled and alone, had done what few in the galaxy could. He had impressed the most powerful beings with nothing but determination, intelligence, and unyielding will. Elias sank to one knee, still catching his breath. The chains rattled faintly, but he no longer noticed the discomfort. He had faced impossible odds, and he had endured. The Queen approached, her eyes glowing faintly. "You have shown me what humans are capable of," she said softly. "You have proven that even one man, small in scale and shackled, can challenge the expectations of an empire. Perhaps the galaxy has been blind to your kind for too long." Elias looked up at her. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "I do not fight for recognition. I fight because it is necessary. I endure because that is what humans do. I hope my actions can show that even small beings matter." The Queen nodded. "They do matter, Captain Ward, and you matter more than you know." For the first time, Elias felt a sense of true triumph. The trials had tested him to the limit, yet he had endured. He had proven to an entire alien empire that humans, though small and seemingly fragile, could overcome impossible challenges. And more importantly, he had begun to change the perception of his species, showing that courage, intellect, and perseverance were stronger than chains, fear, or doubt. As he was led back to his chamber, exhausted but unbroken, Elias realized that the trial of worlds had been more than a test of strength. It had been a test of character. And in that moment, he knew that humans, no matter the odds, would continue to rise. In the distance, the stars shone across the galaxy, indifferent and endless. But on this world, a shackled human had proven that even the smallest spark of courage could illuminate the darkness, and perhaps one day, reshape the fate of many worlds. The arena of the trial of worlds had emptied, leaving behind only the marks of struggle, the scuffed floor, the faint echoes of challenges overcome, and the heavy air of anticipation. Captain Elias Ward, shackled but steady, was brought before the Zorith Queen one final time. The court had gathered to witness the conclusion, and even the nobles who had doubted him now watched in quiet awe. The Queen's violet eyes were fixed on him, her expression a mixture of respect, contemplation, and something softer, admiration. For days she had observed him, questioned him, and watched him endure trials that tested body, mind, and spirit. And now, she would decide what this human, so small in scale yet vast in determination, truly represented. "You have completed every trial," the Queen began, her voice echoing through the hall. "You have faced creatures, puzzles, challenges beyond your species' understanding. You have endured when others would have fallen, and yet, it is not only your endurance that impresses me, it is your spirit, your courage, your unwavering commitment to your principles even when shackled, even when surrounded by doubt." Elias lowered his head slightly, the chains on his wrists clinking softly. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "I am only a man. I do what I must, and I endure because it is necessary. I hope my actions can show that even a small being can make a difference." The Queen's lips curved in a faint smile. "A small being, yes. Yet your presence here has already shifted the perception of your kind. Your voice, your choices, your perseverance, these have spoken louder than any weapon or fleet." The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of alien technology. Nobles whispered to each other, soldiers shifted with newfound respect, and scholars jotted notes furiously. Elias realized that his journey, from shackled prisoner to trial victor, had changed the way the Zorth viewed humanity. They had expected weakness. They had expected fear. Instead, they had witnessed courage, intelligence, and endurance. The Queen stepped closer, raising her hand slightly. "Captain Ward, it is time to remove your shackles." Elias froze. The heavy chains that had bound him for weeks were not only physical restraints, they had been symbols of doubt, fear, and limitation. Now the Queen offered to remove them, acknowledging that he had earned freedom not through power but through character. The guards moved to unlock the restraints. Metal clinked and fell away, and for the first time in weeks Elias flexed his wrists and ankles freely. The weight of captivity lifted from him physically, and a sense of pride and accomplishment lifted it from him emotionally as well. "You stand before me," the Queen continued, "not as a prisoner but as an honored representative of your people. You have proven that humans, though small and fragile in appearance, possess a strength unmatched in spirit and mind. You have shown me that courage, truth, and persistence can change the fate of worlds." Elias bowed deeply, feeling both humility and pride. "I am honored, Your Majesty. I do not seek glory for myself, only for my people." The Queen's eyes softened. "And that is what makes your kind remarkable. You endure not for power, not for conquest, but for something greater. The protection of life, the pursuit of knowledge, and the courage to act even when the odds are against you." A hush fell over the court as she raised her voice. "Let it be known throughout the Zorth Empire that Captain Elias Ward, human of Earth, has earned not only my respect, but also a place in the annals of history. His actions, though those of one man, demonstrate the potential of an entire species." The chamber erupted in murmurs and applause. Nobles who had once sneered bowed slightly, soldiers straightened, and scholars whispered in excitement. The human who had entered in shackles had now become a symbol, a living testament to the strength of humanity. Elias stepped forward, his chains gone, and looked across the room. The Queen regarded him with approval. "Your trials are complete," she said, "but your journey is only beginning. You will serve as an envoy of Earth, a bridge between your world and ours. You will carry the lessons of your people into the galaxy, and perhaps in doing so teach even the strongest empires the value of persistence and courage." The weight of her words settled on him. This was more than recognition, it was responsibility. He had survived the trials, impressed the Queen, and earned freedom, but now he was entrusted with a mission that could shape the future of humanity and the Zorth Empire. "I accept, Your Majesty," Elias said firmly. "I will serve, and I will do my best to represent humanity with honor." The Queen nodded, her gaze sweeping across the court. "Let it be known that even the smallest voice can echo across the galaxy. Let it be known that courage and integrity are not measured by size, strength, or lifespan. And let it be known that one human, shackled no more, has shown us the power of spirit, determination, and truth." For the first time in weeks, Elias felt completely unbound, not just by metal but by fear, doubt, and expectation. He had walked into the palace shackled, but he now stood free, recognized and respected. The chains that had constrained him had become symbols of a journey that had changed the course of perception, not just for him, but for his entire species. The Queen motioned for him to step forward. "Elias Ward," she said, her voice carrying to the edges of the hall, "you will walk among the stars not as a prisoner, but as a representative of humanity. Your courage has shown us that the galaxy underestimates humans at its own peril." Elias lifted his head, his gaze steady. He felt the weight of his new role, but he also felt pride, hope, and determination. He had proven that even one human could stand before an alien empire and make a difference. That same human could now lead others, represent Earth, and show that courage, intelligence, and spirit mattered more than size or power. As the court cleared, leaving the chamber echoing with quiet awe, the Queen spoke once more. "Remember this, Captain Ward. Strength is measured not in the power to destroy, but in the courage to endure, the wisdom to act wisely, and the persistence to rise after every fall. Humans have shown these qualities. Do not forget them." Elias nodded. "I will not, Your Majesty. I promise." The Queen stepped back to her throne, observing him with an intensity that was both regal and personal. For weeks she had watched him endure trials, answer questions, and prove his worth. Now she saw a human capable not only of surviving but of inspiring change, bridging the gap between species and perhaps even teaching her empire lessons that centuries of power had never revealed. The chamber was silent, save for the faint hum of alien technology. Elias looked around, seeing the eyes of Zorth nobles, soldiers, and scholars upon him. He realized that his actions had resonated far beyond himself. He had proven that humans, though small and fragile by appearance, could endure impossible trials, inspire respect, and change the hearts and minds of even the most powerful beings. For the first time, he felt a quiet sense of triumph, not the kind born of victory in battle, but the kind born of understanding, endurance, and courage. He had entered the palace shackled, expected to fail, underestimated by all. And now he stood free, respected and entrusted with the responsibility to shape the future. The Queen rose, her robe shimmering in the light of the chamber. "Captain Elias Ward," she declared, "you have done more than survive. You have changed our perception, inspired our court, and proven that courage and spirit matter more than strength alone. You will walk freely, but remember, with freedom comes responsibility. Represent your people wisely, teach what humans can do, and perhaps together we can shape a galaxy where courage is recognized in all species." Elias bowed deeply. "I understand, Your Majesty. I will do my best." The chains that had once held him clinked faintly as he straightened, but they were no longer part of him. He was free in body, mind, and spirit. He had walked into the palace shackled, but he would walk out as a symbol, a living proof that humans, even when underestimated, could endure, inspire, and change the galaxy. As he stepped toward the exit, the eyes of the Zorth court followed him, not with mockery or doubt, but with awe and respect. Soldiers straightened, nobles murmured in admiration, and scholars recorded every detail of his trials. Elias realized that his journey had only begun. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown dangers and wonders, but he knew this. Humans would not shrink in the face of challenges. They would endure. They would act. They would rise. The Queen watched him leave, her violet eyes reflecting a mixture of pride, curiosity, and hope. One human, she realized, had taught her something centuries of rule had never shown, that courage, persistence, and truth are forces far stronger than any weapon or empire. Elias stepped into the bright light of the palace courtyard, breathing freely for the first time in weeks. The sun glinted off distant spires, and starships gleamed in the distance. He was free, yet his purpose was greater than ever. The galaxy awaited, and humans had proven they were ready to meet it. Unbroken, unyielding, and full of spirit. Shackles removed, chains gone. Elias Ward walked forward not as a prisoner, but as a champion of humanity, a bridge between worlds, and a symbol that even the smallest voice can echo across the stars.